Hey guys, Parfax here, and today I have an extremely important video about new BIS gear. Alright, let's get started. Alright, so I'm here on the PTR, and I wanted to bring you guys a video about new BIS gear. Not only because this is going to affect maybe possibly buying some gear that's on the marketplace right now. That is pretty beneficial. But it's going to change the way we gear ourselves out. Now, first, let's talk about exactly what I'm talking about. So on the PTR here, we have a new, basically the new way that perks roll, or at least attributes roll. And that is going to be with dual stats having 5 points higher than single stats. Now, this doesn't include con, so if you have a dex con piece, it is still going to be the 25 for a piece of armor and the 30 for the weapon. But if you are rocking dual stat, this is going to change, and this is massive. Now, originally, when we were looking at all this stuff, I thought this isn't a big deal. This is going to be really good for spear players. This is going to be really good for, you know, sword and shield players, but this makes a lot bigger difference than I originally anticipated. So let's talk about why. So first off, we know that you can now approximately get 50 more attribute points, but you can actually get more, and I'll explain here in a second. So let's look at the reason why this is a big deal. Because not only, like, if I'm a bow player, do I scale off of dex, right? There's no reason I want anything else. Well, let's look at what they did to the first passive points in each one of the trees here. We have strength now has 10% damage to physical, light, and heavy attacks. We have 10% crit chance. We have 10% crit damage. And we have 5% ability cooldown. Now, on its face value, you're like, that's not a big deal. But let's look at it a little bit. So, first thing I will say is if you're a build that has to run 300, 200, if you're a bruiser, if you are, you know, any medium armor user that's just really utilizing, sorry, I just bumped my desk. If you're really utilizing the 200 point passive on con and you cannot give it up because it did get a nice bonus here, then this doesn't affect you. This isn't really going to affect anything for you. The only thing it could do is if you are somebody running 300, 200 and running a dual stat weapon, then this will affect you. But if you're someone like me that runs either the 150 con, maybe 100 con, this is a massive, massive change. Now, I've went ahead and I recorded this a little bit ago, and I kind of made it very confusing, so hopefully I've made it a little bit more streamlined. So first, let's bring out the calculator and tell you why this is such a big deal. So the reason why is, first we have to look at the way gear is tracked. So with gear, in the new gear, you're going to have a main stat and a secondary stat. Unfortunately, you're always going to have, in my instance, a bow, you're going to have the dex, the main stat, and one of your other two as a secondary stat. Why is that? Because if it's a secondary stat, as you can see here on our pair of gloves, it's only going to get 10, and when you get to 625, the extra point is going to go on the main stat. So we definitely want this. Now, can you work around this? Yes. There is ways you can finagle your gear to do this, but we really want our main stat to be on top and the other stat to be on the bottom. So let's go back here to our calculator. So the reason why this is a big deal is because we can start getting some of those 50-point passives with pretty easy cost. So we start at 5 points. Remember, every time you go into another tree, let's look. Every time I want to go from dex to strength, I already, well, that's bad because I already have points in there. If I want to go from dex and int, I start off with an additional 5 points. So right off the bat, if I'm trying to hit this 50-point passive, I'm gaining 5 stat points right off the bat. You know, I know if you're scaling weapons, so if I'm running, you know, for instance, the rapier, I will always have that 5 points of scaling. That's cool. That's great, right? But for a dex player, I don't get any benefit from having 5 points focus, 5 points int, 5 points strength. It doesn't do me any good. But now it does. Now we can utilize those extra 5 points. So let's look here. We start at 5, so plus 10. Oh, hold on. We start at 5. We're just going to plus 10. That's 1 piece of gear, 2 pieces of gear, 3 pieces of gear, 4 pieces of gear. Now at 4 pieces of gear, we're at 45 total points. Now we can take 5 points that we would have put into dex, and now we can put that into int to give us 50 points. So that's 4 pieces of gear and 5 dex points. So with 4 pieces of gear, we're going to lose 25 dex. 20 for the 4 pieces of gear, and 5 because we do have to slot attribute points into our, intelligence. So we lost 25 points. We gained 40 int. Well, actually 45 int because we're putting 5 into int instead of dex. So we gained 45 int. But actually, we gained 50 int because we started with 5. So we gained 50 int. Now, that's with 4 pieces of gear. See, that's 4. That's what that little 4 is there. Now, we can do the same thing with strength. So we're going to lose 25 dex. We're actually going to gain 50 strength. Now, you might look, no, that's 100 points. That's massive. But we've only lost 50 dex. So 50 dex, if you didn't see my video on a bow, if you're just going from 300 to 350, is approximately 7% damage loss. That's a lot. That is a big damage loss. Now, what do we gain for that? So for a 7% damage loss, we're going to gain 10% basic attack damage, which is basically enchanted on your bow, and 10% crit damage. This is massive. For just a 7% damage loss, now this is abilities as well, we are gaining 10%. We're basically gaining an additional enchanted, and we're gaining almost an additional vicious. So for 7%, we get enchanted vicious. That is pretty insane. Now, the reason why it's not good for 200 con builds is because you just can't hit these numbers. Because the fact that these items, we'll go here, because the fact that the items actually have the 10 points into each one of them, so you're losing 5 points per, there's not enough points there to really get you going. Because if you were to do, let's get our calculator here, 4, we would lose 25 stat points here. And we don't have 25 stat points to gain. Just because we have to put 10 points into the secondary stat, which is the reason why it doesn't work with con. If you found a way to make it work with con, put it in the description down below. But I'm 95% sure you're with 300, 200, you're not going to be able to, just because they put so much, on here. I guess, yeah, you would have to do, in order for this to work, you would have to do 3 pieces of gear. No, you can only do 2 to lose the 10 because you'll be an extra 10. No, so yeah, there's no way to make it work if you're doing 300, 200. But you can also do this for other weapons. For instance, if you're a great axe user and you just want to go 150 con, right? So we're going to 150 con. We can then get 10% crit chance and 10% crit damage. I know we don't scale a ton off of crit anymore, but maybe you might want to. Or you can get 5% ability cooldown. Now, having said that, I don't think focus is probably ever worth going into. So keep that in mind. If you're a Void Gauntlet user, yes, we're going to go in there. Even if you're Void Ice, Void Fire, I think you're for sure going to at least put the 50 or the 50 points into here. You're not going to lose a whole lot unless you're going the 200 con, like I said. But if you're going only 150, we're going to put it in here because that 5 ability cooldown while still pumping up your Void Gauntlet is going to be really good. If you are a, let's do, Fire Staff, maybe you want crit chance. Now, the int weapons get a little bit of shafted here as well because they can't really utilize the strength passive. You can get the crit chance here, but you could do 10% crit chance and 5% ability cooldown for, again, about a 7% damage decrease. Is that worth it? I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that actually works out to be worth it or not. Definitely if you're going Void Gauntlet is 100% worth it. But if you're going something like, Fire Ice, I'm not 100% sure if it's worth it. All right, guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it's a little bit confusing. And I know a lot of people are very disappointed with the change. Most people thought it wasn't going to be that big of a deal, or actually a lot of people thought it was going to be a big deal, but it's for dual stat weapons. But especially for weapons like, you know, any strength user, you know, Great Axe, Warhammer, and any user that runs like bow, this is a massive, massive change, because this is a huge damage bonus that we're going to get by dual statting. And as you can see here, we're going to, you know, the best in slot is going to be to swap 8 pieces of gear to have them dex over strength and dex over int. Alright guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think of this change, if they should revert it, if you have any BIS gear that you didn't realize you had. Alright guys, I'll see you next time. Peace.